Is there any world in which Nebraska fans are rooting for the success of Scott Frost in his post-Nebraska days? Because I saw a tweet yesterday from one of the Hurrdat fan podcasts for the Huskers, right? That I don't know if they were being sarcastic or not, but it's written, so it's hard to tell. Where they said, "Hey, we wish Scott nothing but the best, whatever." I hope he never wins a football game again.
There's one way that I could see, especially the Husker fan base, rooting for Scott Frost again.
Is that if we're good?
Bingo.
If Rule gets it going.
If Rule wins 9-10 games consistently for like 5 years, and then suddenly Scott Frost is a complete afterthought. It was just this dark period, and then Scott gets it going somewhere. I mean, not to the degree where like Nebraska's playing him for championships, because I think there would be a lot of bad blood there.
It's got to be like an FCS school, though, right?
Exactly.
Like it can't be
absolutely.
It can't be a Power 2 school,
right?
It has to be like a lesser, like, oh, he just wasn't cut out for it here. But we're happy. I mean, kind of like we did with Frank Solich, right? Although the circumstances with Solich were very different.
Very different.
But he goes to Ohio. It's a step down in terms of a program. He's playing at a Group of 5 school. And then people were rooting for him to be successful.
Correct.
Right? I think it would have to be something like that, where it's a clear step below.
And a majority of the fan base believes that Solich was unjustly and unfairly fired. I do believe that to be true, but I think a lot of people knew that Scott Frost very much deserved to be fired. So it is if success comes for Nebraska football's program, then I do believe
there's a pathway
that people will soften on Scott Frost.
So
because again, it'll just be a hiccup in the entire history of the program.
Remind me, how old were you in 2003?
I was 11.
Okay, so you were maybe old enough to remember. So
yeah,
at the time, I don't think the majority of people thought that he shouldn't be fired. I think retroactively, because we found out that Steve Peterson is a pile.
Yeah, it didn't turn out well.
Right. No, yeah. But a lot of it, I think, has to do more with Steve Peterson than it did with Frank Solich, because I think a lot of people were frustrated with Solich at the time, right? He had the 7-7 season the year before he got fired, made some changes. They got better in 2003. But I think a lot of people were like, hey, this isn't who Nebraska is. And coming off of where Nebraska had been, that really wasn't who Nebraska should be, right? Like that's right. At the time, that was a fair assessment of the situation. But I really feel like a lot of the retroactive love for Frank Solich came out of the retroactive hate for Steve Peterson.
Correct.
Where it was, oh, this guy sucks. We maybe treated this other guy too harshly.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, because Solich was an assistant for so long, and because he was part of winning programs, I mean, it's hard not to see like a legend and give him a legendary status
for sure. And he was way better than not at Nebraska as the head coach even.
Yeah, and those shoes were huge to fill, and I think he tried to fill them.
Listen, obviously the 2001 team played for a national title.
Yep.
But he's got the last conference championship in Nebraska, 99. And that team was the 99 team was really good. If they had been able to hold on to the football at all, they're playing Florida State for a national championship instead of Virginia Tech.
Right.
Like that is a really, really good football team. Probably one of the 2 best teams in the country that year. Obviously 2002 happened. You lose Eric Crouch and you've got some turnover there, but he did a very good job at Nebraska, especially considering what we've seen Nebraska turn into.
Right.
And I don't know. I think that has helped a lot. I also think you're right. His legendary status with Nebraska helped him a lot. Obviously, that has not helped Scott Frost, but he also didn't win here at all. And the way it went down, I can't stress this enough. The way it went down, where he is considered untouchable, as I heard, I'm not just making this up, as I've heard from someone who would know, he is considered untouchable by high major ADs. One of which was before he even came to Nebraska. This is because there was a narrative out there that maybe he went off the rails after things started going bad at Nebraska. This is who he's been.
He was never on the rails.
There are no rails. It's like the line in Friends. Like the line is a dot to Scott Frost. He doesn't know where it is. He can't see it. He's so far past the line. He's just like, what's that over there? Is that do I have like a speck on my glasses? What's going on there?
Yeah. So, I mean, back to the original point, I don't think there's ever going to be a day like there was this last season for Nebraska football where they bring back Scott Frost.
But you think there's a portion of the fan base that might eventually be like, oh, it's kind of nice to see him succeed?
I think it'll be like a hearty chuckle and then a good for you and then a swig of beer, and that's it. I think that will be just amount of care that Nebraska fans will pay to him, but they'll be like, that's fine that he's doing fine. I don't think there's going to be, a lot of fanfare. I don't think people are going to be ecstatic about it. I don't think that'll exist.
I will say if he ever succeeds for whatever reason, which I don't think is going to happen because I don't think he's wired that way. Mm-hmm. First of all, I don't think he's wired to change his behavior. And B, I don't think he's wired to be good at a high-profile job. But if it ever happens that way, I swear to you, I will be like burn it to the ground angry. Because I don't feel like he deserves it. And I'm not the guy, I'm not the one who gets to decide who deserves what, but I will be mad about it. 100%. Let's get to Wyatt on line 1 here. Let's talk about Scott Frost. Wyatt, you got about a minute. What's up?
I'm saying I'm glad that Damon's not there because I'm enjoying the low-hanging fruit conversation today.
I love fruit.
Absolutely.
And what you're saying about when we forgive Frost, like it would have to be a special set of circumstances where he would actually change and then basically apologize to the fan base and talk about it and don't just say, I don't want to talk about Nebraska like he did in that interview. Which he did have like more than like 3 quotes in that article.
No, that was about it. He did not talk a lot, and he certainly didn't take accountability for anything.
70-minute interview, barely said anything. Barely anything made it into the article itself.
So, yeah, I mean, he would have to change and then admit it for us to even consider forgiveness, I think.
Wyatt, we appreciate the call, and I think you're right. I think he's right. I think he'd have to take some sort of responsibility. That's all I wanted to do when he was here, was take any kind of responsibility for what was happening. Coming up next, I do want to get into what I talked about with some of the alleged dysfunction within the athletic department in that Dennis Dodd piece. We've got more coming up on Hurrdat Sports Radio.